PDR Tool Time. Tools, reviews, and stories. From techs that you can trust.
Welcome to another episode of PDR Tool Time. This is episode 168. My name is Daniel Grom with John Ridstrom, Hudson Tansey, and our special guest, Paul Kordon. How you gentlemen doing today?
Oh, rocking and rolling.
And John, who are our sponsors?
Today's show is going to be brought to you by Mobile Tech RX, Hog Glue and Hog Tabs, CBD Direct, Magnatech Matte, and our good friends over there at Edgy Tools.
Yes. Guys, do us a favor and support us. Go to our website, get those discount codes, and please use them because it helps us out and supports the show. All right, gentlemen, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, Daniel, I think we had to have Paul on here because Paul and I had a great conversation the other day and about this extreme hail that we're now able to fix with new technology. And we're doing more and more as techs every single day, especially hail techs. And now it's time to start having the conversation of how are we going to create a proper procedure and to estimate this extreme hail. What should we be doing? How should we be doing that? And Paul is kind of heading this movement.
Uh-oh, you're cutting out a little bit there. Hudson.
Oh, yeah.
Hudson's having a few little internet difficulties. He's freezing up on us. So, yeah, you're saying that the things have changed with our industry. Now I brag about that to people. I have 4 different techniques that I do. I started off with 1, now I have 4. And those need to be considered and taken in consideration, I think, in all aspects, and especially extreme hail. And you back here, Hudson?
Yeah, sorry about that. For some reason, my computer decided to switch to my
my
phone network.
Oh, is that what it
I've
was?
got a phone network and I've got a higher range network, and it decided to switch over to the phone network for some reason.
Okay, good to have you back.
Good.
Well, all right. As we're getting into this, I feel I'd better make this perfectly clear that I am speaking as a dent technician, not as somebody. As we're getting in here and defining sizes and that sort of stuff, that's coming from John, the hail guy, who has been fixing extreme hail for a long time and pricing it. Paul and I have had 1,000 discussions on pricing this. And I do not speak as a representative of Mobile Tech RX, nor does Mobile Tech RX define any sizes or pricing. So.
And I'm speaking as a layman. Because I don't do enough hail to have any expertise in this. So I'm your expert layman.
Well, but hold on. Let's make sure that everybody understands you fix big dents. And that's kind of what this is about. It's
okay.
When you start to get over a double oversized dent, which we'll define here in a second, you're really getting into the territory of, retail
collision.
/ collision and, the stuff that route guys do all the time. So I think you have more expertise to offer than that, Daniel.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like
agree.
the way you frame that. That's good.
I agree. Well, here's the thing that bothers me about this monster hail repair is everybody's like, well, it's hail. Not once it has left that double oversized category, that's not hail. We are into the paintless collision repair.
Mm-hmm.
When we can take our extreme hail dents and we can enter them into dent contests and be competitive with the car that ran into a tree, that is not a hail matrix dent. I don't care who you are.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, that size isn't usually on anybody's matrix.
No, absolutely not.
The issue is getting our good friends, the insurance adjusters, to agree with us as well.
Mm-hmm.
No, I really didn't have that big of an issue with it.
Oh, really?
I haven't either. I haven't either, John. I'm experiencing the same thing you are.
Paul and I, you and I talked about this heavily a lot last summer as we were both in Wyoming doing some just nasty stuff. But let's do some quick clarifications. So, as we're discussing, an oversized dent begins at larger than a $50 coin. So, for those of you that don't know the true measurements of a $50 coin, that is 1.205 inches. Mm-hmm. Is your $50 coin. If you're need it to be in millimeters, that is 30.607 millimeters.
Awesome.
So if we're going to go, oversize is anything from basically 1.206 inches and up is going to be an oversize. But the question really comes in is, where do we stop oversize and begin double oversize? And where do we stop double oversize and begin, oh my God?
Yeah. Now, hey, here's
I
a
agree.
quick question. Here's a quick question for you guys. I'm an amateur hell guy. Simply, I do maybe anywhere from 10 to 30 hell cars a year, so I'm not doing a lot. I am never around when the adjuster is coming. I go to my body shops for that one-off hell car. I estimate it, and then I give them my estimate, and then I leave, and then they send it in to the insurance. Sometimes the adjuster comes to look at it, but I'm never there because the insurance adjuster can never give us a set time when they're going to be there. They're like, oh, I'll be there sometime Wednesday. I don't have time to sit around all day waiting for them. So I feel like I can't be there to sell this extreme oversized dent for the price that I'd want to put it on there. And this is why this is something that I think would be important, is if there is a procedure of some sort there.
You need a process.
Yeah,
a process, something that's there so that I don't, because right now, if I'm not there to sell it or to explain why it costs this much, my estimator doesn't know. He's like, oh.
So if I can interject, that's a great question. I think it's a good point that it's an excellent point you're making. And I think it's a good time to go back to what we know and also what we have. And that is that when it comes to collision repair centers or body shops, even body shops, I'm working in one right now, and I'm talking extensively with the adjuster and the damage writer, the adjusters that are coming in there, and the damage writer, and they're all telling me and admitting, hey, when it comes to estimating side panel dents, even for collision repair, they really don't have a process for that either. Most of the time, they'll call their head body guy and they'll say, how many hours do you need on this dent? And if you find one who's been around a while, he might stick his hand on the dent and kind of get an idea for the size of the dent using his hand, and then he'll throw out some arbitrary number on hours, right? Yeah. And it's always higher than what they want to pay, and there's some adjustment that needs to happen in there. And so that is the closest that even the collision repair industry comes to having a process for estimating dents in the sides of cars or anywhere on a car. And so what, in answer to your question, Hudson, is you need a process. And what's great about what we're doing here with talking about extreme hail damage is that what I'm suggesting is that we start applying the process that we already have in the Price Dent feature on Mobile Tech RX, which is a digital version of the price guides that we've had around for a while now. And we start using that already existing process, which we know works with insurance on non-hail dents. But we're now saying, hey, let's start applying that. And we are. There are some of us who are actually already doing that and successfully making on a set anything over a double oversized dent retail price guide money. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
And I would add over the top of that what you're saying there, Paul, to Hudson. I never had to sell it. By doing the process itself was so explanatory that there was nothing to sell. The adjuster had to come up with the reason why my explanation in my estimate or my repair plan was incorrect, and there was never one. There was just a look of okay.
So John, give me really quick like a 30-second thing of, say you have a dent, like you told me, I know. You told me there was a rail you did, right? That was with an extreme oversized dent. Yeah. That was, you got like what, 600 for?
600 to do a rail. I had
so how did you hand that estimate over to that adjuster in such a way to where those line items made sense to where they didn't fight you on it?
In this particular case, we emailed it off and they didn't even call us back. It was kind of a disappointment. But because what I did was I wrote that rail. The rail had 2 dents in it. It had one that was right about the size of a quarter, and then it had this one that was I think 3.5 inches across, right next to the windshield on a Ram pickup. And I put a video of this on my Facebook last summer when I did this truck. But so I wrote the rail, 1 quarter size dent with the glue pull, or double panel. I think it might have been Geico even that we did this for. And I wrote it as the 1/4 size dent with the glue pull. And then I wrote the other dent on the rail in Price-A-Dent, and I mapped it out. I had both edges of the dent outlined and defined. I had the measurement for how far across it was. I had the depth put into it. And by the time you write all of that up and you do that into Price-A-Dent, and it shoots that all out into a full paragraph, a complete explanation. And then I also then added a note onto the top of it that says that dent does not fall within any Hale matrix sizing category. The sizing category ends at $50. There's no definition beyond $50.
Yeah.
So I stated that, I put in there that it exceeds all sizing on a Hale matrix.
Okay.
All sizing in the pricing.
How'd you get to $600 though?
Because that was worth the price come out at in Price-A-Dent. I
How
think
big was it?
So you probably had a.
it was like 3.5 inches and super deep.
So you
And then it
probably
was on a
had.
repainted panel.
Then you had a 3.5-inch dent. You probably had
Super deep.
obstruction. You
Yep.
had depth, and then was there another markup in there?
It's
Or-
on a rail, so tall vehicle.
Well, I actually had glue pull and then a repainted panel because it wasn't factory paint. I glue pulled that sucker for like 2.5
Oh
hours.
shit!
Yeah,
Really?
that-
Yes.
So here might be a good time to discuss or to explain like what does the process look like, and what process are we talking about? And John kind of just described how he did it, and that's exactly how I do it as well. But I can break it down into 3 simple steps for most guys, and that is if you're currently using a PDR price guide or you use Price-A-Dent, what Price-A-Dent is doing for you is basically taking 3 steps. You take the size of the damage, which in what we do is mark out the damage and measure it, and then you take any factors or markups that affect that damage, such as double panel, glue pull, deep, whatever the case may be, and then you take into consideration any R&I. So typically, when you're doing side panel stuff, you're going to consider what R&I needs to be done. In a Hale scenario, obviously, that's going to be kind of built into the overall, because you're not going to R&I a headliner in a Hale scenario for just that one dent. But that's typically the 3 steps that fall under that price guide process. In this case, we're really just focusing on, with Hale, we're focusing on the first 2. We're going, how big is the dent, and how far outside of that double oversized category is it? And by our measurements that we just talked about, if you have 1.205 inches or 206 inches equals an oversized dent, then really you're talking about approximately a 2.5-inch dent is where double oversized or hen egg that will be written on most matrices stops.
Yeah.
At that point, when you're over a 2.5-inch Hale dent, you're talking about extreme Hale. And I'll say that from my opinion. However,
where my
I think there's kind
measurements
of a
went.
consensus on that. You know what I mean?
Then you switch over to Price-A-Dent.
And
Yep.
that I think to give everybody a good idea of what a 2.5-inch dent is, would be a Coke can, correct? It'd be if you put a Coke can.
Very close. Yeah, let's see. The middle of a Coke can is 2.65 inches. The upper lip is 2.11 inches.
By upper lip, do you mean like the little?
That's where the can narrows down and where you actually drink from. That metal cap is 2.11 and the main body is 2.65.
So what you're saying,
I've had these measured out for a very long time in defining this myself. When I started billing insurance companies like this, I figured I better come up with something to back it up.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me you could fit the whole thing in your mouth. Okay.
But when we discussed the hen egg, so as we were getting deeper into this and having this discussion, and hen egg has been discussed. So how big is a hen egg? So I tried Googling the average hen egg. There is no actual size. There is only weight used for a hen egg.
That's for those Midwest boys.
Let me remind you of something. When you go to the grocery store and you buy a dozen eggs, you have the option to buy medium eggs, large eggs, or XL
extra
eggs, right?
large.
And then if you go to certain grocery stores, you can actually buy those little teeny tiny like robin's eggs or whatever they are. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So what exactly
We're
is
talking
a
about a
hen?
moving target here. Yeah.
And are we talking about a hen in the terms of a chicken or a goose? Because there's a different size in the eggs.
What? And
So-
what are the markups between those eggs?
What about an ostrich hen?
Yeah, and we're
What are the
looking at.
factors?
So if
We
we
don't wanna
use
go
a
that route.
standard chicken as you're stuck between 15 and 30 ounces.
Look, here's something promising, gentlemen. If the insurance agencies can go and use things like eggs to define dents, I'm pretty sure us coming with hard numbers
That's
is going
exactly
to
right.
sell.
That's
Then I
exactly
get
right.
to use carton because this sucker will hold a carton of eggs.
Well, so you bring up a good point, though, Hudson, and that is that in my experience with adjusters, and I deal with adjusters a lot in my retail shop because we're writing large PDR damage on side panels that is most of the time above a deductible, and the customer will go the route of an insurance claim, and we have to deal with the adjuster. And most of these adjusters are absolutely on board with me having a way to justify and document the work that needs to be done and the price that we're putting on it. And that is, at the end of the day, every single one of them have told me that what's most important is that they are able to document and justify the damage because they are all subject to the authority of their superior who's going to ask them why they paid that price to PDR a panel. And that's, I was just talking to an adjuster today who was saying the same thing. These guys are seeing the PDR price guides that I'm using to measure things out and putting them in the pictures and stuff, and they're asking for those guides because it's the only repeatable, consistent process that exists to estimate dents. And I think, if you ask me, I think the body shop industry might be picking up a few cues from us, PDR industry guys. You know what I mean?
I hope
They
so.
should.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I did on all of mine was I have those magnetic tape measures. And it was on every photo that ever got sent.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, proof of size. They can argue that you know, maybe that's not legitimate, anything they want to do like that. But then they're going to have to come in and measure it. And we're going to have to put the light on it. Yeah, Paul, Scott, he's holding one of them up from
This-
PDR Profit.
You know,
I don't think you guys have seen this yet, but this
haven't
is a
seen the new
magnetic
ones.
ruler that has an actual price guide built into it.
Built onto the
Yeah,
ruler.
that makes
Why
me
don't we
super
have
happy.
those?
Yeah.
Because I invented them in my brain, and I'm the only one that has them at this point. And I'm not kidding you. Where I'm working right now on a hailstorm, I have had 2 different insurance companies, adjusters, ask me for these, ask me if they could have copies of these, and I'm handing them out like candy.
I'm telling you what, and knowing at least some of the adjusters in my area, they'd probably try to stick that on the side of a Range Rover and be like, "Man, your magnet doesn't work."
Moving a markup.
Yeah. So, you know, if we're discussing the sizes, then there's only one other size that ever gets thrown out. So we know the coins, and we know that the hen egg, it gets thrown out, but there's only one other size I've ever seen on any matrix, and that was credit card. If it's beyond a credit card size, it no longer falls into repairable for PDR. Was exactly how it was worded, I believe, on a old progressive matrix in there. So if anybody wants to know that size, that's 3.36 inches on that credit card.
So
So
if
that's-
we,
yeah,
how does that
with
price
their-
up
with their
if
length.
we were? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Credit cards with their length.
That was length,
Okay.
the long. So because that's how it was defined.
Okay.
The length of a credit card.
So on average, if we're doing a 3-inch dent, let's say we're doing a 3-inch dent in the open part of a roof, I'm looking at the price guide at that point because it's bigger than a double oversized dent. And on the price guide, you have, let's see, a 3-inch dent starts at $250. That's with no factors at all, right? So you start including double panel and depth and all that stuff, and it's going to go up depending on the percentage markup. So instead of just getting, let's say, 3 oversized on that 3-inch dent, which I'm sure many of us have done, we've just called it
$120.
You're talking 3 oversized typically is going to give you $120. 4 oversized is going to give you $160. And we just increased our margin by like almost $100 just by using the price guide on that one 3-inch dent. And I've already fixed dents in this storm that I'm on that are 3, 4, and 5 inches. You know what I mean?
Are you having to use the Power PDR box for these?
No,
No.
not any of the ones that I've done yet. But there are ones that you probably will.
And if you
Normally, I get about 6 inches before I start having to break out the Power PDR.
Yeah, and if we had the Power PDR box, I mean that would possibly be another upcharge as well, correct?
Absolutely.
I charged for it. You bet. You bet. And we're doing all of this, and we're talking about all these charges and everything, but I just charged them to, Paul, you and I have discussed this, but I just charged State Farm for hood stand setup time on my own private vehicles that I'm fixing the hail on.
He did. I saw it with my own eyes.
Did
It's
it get
pretty
approved?
awesome. I'm like a proud papa.
But did it get approved?
Yes, I charged 2/10 of an hour. I labeled it up as now the adjuster knew me, and he rolled it into labor on the hood. In the R&Is, he padded up the R&I times, but he rolled it in. It was a start. They're seeing it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Now that's the goal, and this is exactly what we're talking about.
Golly,
so we're giving you
better
the
than how I
process.
got treated. I told you about my Geico, right? They wouldn't pay me to take the hood off.
What?
Last year, I was working at a body shop, and it was a DRP for Geico, and they would not give any R&I time for hood. I'm like, look, man, I need the hood off to fix this. And the Geico adjuster actually officed out of that body shop, and so he felt like he could do whatever he wanted. And he was just like, look, I don't pay you to make your job convenient. I pay you to fix the dents.
Ouch.
You don't need the dent. You don't need the hood off to fix the dents. And I'm like, are you serious?
Man, I would nail 25% for obstructed damage in a heartbeat. And when you do that on $1,000 hood, I'd rather get $250 for additional damage than half hour for the R&I.
But that's when you go, I'm honestly, Mr. Adjuster, I'm just trying to save you money. If I take it off, I actually save you 25%. If we leave it on, I have to charge you extra because of the obstructions and the direction I have to get to it. But in this case, taking it off saves you money. Doesn't that make sense? Wouldn't you like to save money? Yes.
So one of the things that I use, one of the sayings that I use with adjusters on a regular basis is that in the world that we live in, I say it just like this, in the world that we live in, anything that takes more time, energy, or effort usually comes with an additional cost, right? And that's exactly how the body shop functions. So most adjusters are already aware of that idea, right? They already get it. And when they start hearing that, I start putting our estimating process in the context of the repairs of the larger damage that we're doing in the context of these bigger dents are taking us more time, energy, effort, skill. You know what I mean? Skill that's taken me 20 years to get there, and many of you guys years and years and years to get there. They start to understand that, and there's really not a lot of pushback. I'll be honest with you. We have gotten every single, if it hasn't pushed the panel to full replacement cost, we've gotten every single extreme hail dent paid for the way that we're estimating right now.
But we are discussing the manner in which we're estimating it, which is documentation. These, as we've listed, time and time again, we've listed the sizes. So when we are documenting these extreme hails, documenting that size, I'm not just saying it's ugly, it's big.
Yeah.
I'm saying it was 3.5 inches at its maximum width, or 4 inches. I'm saying it was deep, and I get to use a deep starts at 0.76 millimeters. So we have that. I actually have a digital depth gauge to be able to back that statement up. I can't just, I need to, if you're doing this, and when you are doing this, you do need to back up every single thing that you said. The ruler. And when you put that ruler on, better be exactly the same as a ruler. You don't go out to your magnet place and be like, make it 1 inch, but make it 1 point, or 0.9 of an actual inch. Everything's got to be square. And if you have it all well documented, the only thing that anybody else can do is come back to you and just say no. Because there's no counter argument. There's no real counter argument. The only thing they can do is say, we're going to do it conventional. And I've yet to have anybody do it.
And that's usually because it's subject to their opinion, which is, as we all know, doesn't really matter, because when it comes down to opinions, I'm going to trust the opinion of the professional dent guy who's sitting there fixing these things all day long. And most adjusters will, because many adjusters will admit they don't really know what they're looking at. As even the cat guys have come in and they've said, man, we look at these things outside sometimes and we don't know the right count. We don't know the right size. So my point is, we are at a major advantage being professionals in our industry. And part of what is on us as an obligation in order to get those prices is exactly what you just said, John. And that is, we need to be able to back it up. Do not write bunk estimates on dents and without being able to prove, to justify, and especially through documentation. In other words, can it be taken? Can you have photos taken of it? Can the information be written down on a piece of paper so that it's easily explainable? And the more that we do that, the more that I do that, the more that I find that there is very little pushback, because we're really making their job easier. We're going, hey, look at the circle I just wrote on this dent, and look at the magnet in the picture, and send that to your supervisor. And they're like, okay, great, wonderful, thank you.
This is what we need to do on a whole, though, as our industry. If everybody does this, if we're all on the same page, it's harder to work against us as individuals if we're all doing this. So,
I think
it's really on all of us as independent guys to do all those steps, do the right documentation. You're basically you want to make their job easier to go back to their boss and give an argument to their boss.
Oh, yeah.
The more ammo you give them, the better off you are. And the only thing they have to work against us is really a comparison to conventional. And that's the only time I've ever gotten any blowback, is when they're saying, oh, well, I can replace and paint this hood for the same money or less. That's their only argument.
So here we're all, it seems like we're all pretty much in agreement. I'm pretty sure most, if most, if not all, independent techs would be in agreement with what we're speaking of right now. So Paul, my question for you is, what are the nuts and bolts? What's our next steps here that we're trying to, what are you trying to accomplish here with this?
So my goal at the end of the day is to encourage every single independent technician, anybody who owns a brick and mortar PDR shop, any hail company, broker, trainers, body shops, and even insurance companies, to start to incorporate a process for estimating extreme hail. It's really as simple as that. And I didn't say, let me explain what I mean by process. I don't necessarily mean that you need to use the Paul Kordon price guide with those particular dollar figures, right? Because I know that there are guys who have their own price guides that use the same process, but the first dent or inch dent starts at their own market value price. So let's take the price out of the situation. Let's take the dollar figure out of it, but at least begin to incorporate the practicing writing estimates on extreme hail. That's anything over approximately 2.5 inches, using a process. And I would recommend the price guide process because I know that it's been proven to work. And everybody who is on Mobile Tech RX has access to the price of dent feature, and they are able to easily do that. And it'll add that single dent to the line item. And a great example is, I think I hosted this last year. I was in Idaho, and I had a Toyota Camry trunk. I think I've talked about this before, and it had about $600 worth of regular quarter size hail that was able to be estimated using the existing hail matrix, right? So all of the numbers worked out on that. About $600 on that, and there was a separate dent that I believe was about 4 or 5 inches, maybe 3 inches, I can't remember. And I had estimated that using the price guide, and that additional single extreme dent added another $437.50 to the final ticket. So that deck lid paid just over $1,000 to repair. That was $600 in normal hail and another $437 for that single dent. This is being repeated with multiple insurance companies on a regular basis by not just me, but other technicians that are out there who have heard this before and have started practicing that. So my point is, listen, it is reasonable, it's justifiable, it's documentable. We are getting it. Some of us are. And I would like to see other guys begin to get that too, because I think it's just the right direction to go for the industry. And it actually helps the adjusters to justify the damage that they're writing checks for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely can't pick out any one pricing structure by any means, but the whole principle behind this is to set up your own structure, even if it's with your own pricing, but it's repeatable. And that's what you're going to find using the price guide and in Price of Dent on Mobile Tech RX. All of the large dent calculators, tactical dent guide, that all are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And put in your inches, set in your amounts, set in the increments that changes, add in your factors. What all do you feel is an upcharge? And then you have a repeatable estimating device. So every time you estimate, we talked about my rail dent and how I charged onto that, but that wasn't a 50-second estimate. I had to put the light up onto it. I had to make sure and mark all the extremes, and then I had to measure it out. And I had to so I probably spent 5 minutes putting those numbers on that one single item.
Yeah.
So, you're not going to be able to rush through it, just like you can't rush through the repair. But do the process, do the documentation in whatever manner in which you choose, and you will find that you have gotten paid for it, and you have set a new standard for everybody.
Okay, let me ask you this question, Paul. Is what's going on out there, is they're just including that in at the double oversize, and they're just doing it for the double oversize price?
I think there's a couple of things that are happening, and John can back me up on this. I think you have guys who are just going to kick a panel and go, it's not worth it for the price that we're getting. I think you're going to have guys who will say, okay, well, we'll write that up as a double or a triple oversized dent, or just keep adding oversize to the panel. And I'm sure if you do enough of that, you can get that dollar figure. But the reality is, what it's not doing for the industry is that's not helping us.
It's not creating a standard.
That we have a process for this that is better than just throwing in a couple extra oversize on there. I just did a roof this morning that, if I remember correctly, had 3 3-inch dents, 2 4-inch dents, and a 5-inch dent in it. You know what I mean? And so even if they're not line item writing those dents at individual prices, what it's doing is it's forcing them to go to their max. And if the max replacement cost on that roof, the max replacement was like $2,000, it forces them to go to $2,000 replacement cost on that roof. And then at least I've gotten paid the max that I can get on that roof without totaling the vehicle in order to PDR it. Assuming that those dents are PDRable, right? Assuming there's repairable damage. And that's kind of my point, is if there are techs who are capable of repairing a 3 or 4, a 5-inch deep hail dent to a level of expectation, a high level of quality, I should say, then I believe those techs are definitely worth getting that extra money for those dents.
Right.
I just still believe it's the best thing for the car.
Now, let me take you into my way forward machine. So we're going to go into the future. You've established this system in the future, and the future is the insurance companies are going to get these tunnels that you're going to drive the car through, and it's going to mark all the dents. Vince has already shown a picture of this machine. It exists today, but eventually all the insurance companies or big hail companies are going to have these machines. They're going to drive it through, and those oversized dents are going to show up. And if we don't have this process in place, you're not going to get paid to do it.
That's right. It's just going to get marked as an oversized because there is no definition.
So let me, can I?
So the future is counting on you.
I'm going to say I have a fear. There's one thing I fear of this. I'm not a fearful person, but one thing that I would be concerned about is just as we see the insurance companies have taken and made their own matrices that haven't been updated since the 90s, right? And we're having to, some start at 65 for a 1 to 5 dime, which is just, ridiculous.
There's some that are less.
Yeah. And and that's when insurance takes something. So who was it? Was it the dent companies that created the matrices, or was it the insurance companies? And where I'm getting to with this is, if we create these price guides and we start doing that, who's to say that insurance won't go and create their own price guides for dent removal and say a 1-inch dent should really be $50 and a 2-inch dent should be, $100. Who would say they would do that?
But what's the difference between an insurance company doing that and another PDR company creating a wholesale oversized dent matrix and doing the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think
that's why we're not actually defining the dollars. What we're doing here is we're trying to define the sizes, and the dollars are going to be as the technician sees fit.
Okay.
Yeah. I think what concerns me more, I totally understand that concern. What concerns me more is going back to what Daniel was just saying, which is, we know that at some point the insurance companies will continue to push in a direction that is going to pay less and require more of the technicians. That's just kind of how it goes, right?
That's standard
And
procedure.
yeah, and my point is, we will be there as technicians if nobody does anything, right? So my point is, at least I would like to see the ball being moved in the direction that is in our favor as technicians and as PDR industry people, at least for no other reason but to practice the movement of the ball down the field a little bit, and go, hey, listen, we have some processes that work really well. We have processes that are better than the collision repair industry at this point. And I know for a fact, I spoke with a gentleman who owns a body shop in New Mexico, and we were talking about the aluminum PDR study. And I know this is going a little bit off on a tangent, but you'll get my point. We're talking about the aluminum PDR study, and he said to me, actually, the PDR industry doing the aluminum PDR study helped the collision repair industry because they also had problems with trying to get paid additional money and hours on aluminum repair, as they were on steel. And so I'm looking at the PDR industry and going, because we're younger, we're a little bit more nimble. I think we have a lot of brilliant minds in our industry. I think what we're doing by pushing the ball forward for our industry is actually affecting in a positive way the other industries that are involved in collision repair as well. So it's just for me, it's kind of an interesting practice in doing something rather than doing nothing.
So, but outside, so here, I hear you, and we want to support you. We want to do that, right? Especially myself as an independent tech. So outside of our own individual cases on a day-by-day basis and making sure we do this correctly, documenting correctly, what can we, us here, and also the people listening, start doing to get this ball rolling? Do we need to I know that you've been in talks with possibly NAPDRT and PDR Nation, trying to get them to kind of support us. Should we start putting pressure on them since they represent us and saying, hey, we think this needs to happen? Or, I mean, what should we be doing? What's our action steps here besides doing it on estimates ourselves?
So if you ask me, I think my opinion is the first and most important thing is guys who are in the position to be able to do this, especially on a repeated basis, should be doing it. They should adopt the process. You start using the process tomorrow and at least give it a shot. If you haven't done it before and you're nervous, you don't know what to say to the adjuster, give it a shot, try it, and watch how much easier it is than you think it's going to be. And then number two, I would say, for anybody, not just NapDart and PDR Nation, but anybody who is in any semblance of a support role to the PDR industry, I think they should also be encouraging technicians to adopt the process. And if and when possible, and I'd say that they should probably at least give some sort of a supportive stance on what the industry is adopting and doing. But again, I think it's going to be easier to do that when the majority of technicians are all kind of pushing in the same direction. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I'm going to agree with you there. And part of the reason why, if we technicians do not define these sizes, somebody else is going to.
Yes.
That's the big advantage that we have. This show is a perfect example of that we're having this discussion, that we're putting out there for the masses, that we go to Mobile Tech Expo, we go to some of the other venues, even going to Anson and getting together and talking as an industry. It's putting the control in our hands and not into the insurance hands, and that we dictate what we want to get paid. I don't know any other industry that does this, because
I don't want to, not want what we deserve.
Right.
It's not a greedy notion.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right about that, Hudson. Thank you.
And I would say too that, more importantly than just all of us getting on the same page and the same direction to get what we deserve, I would say as importantly is the idea that we continue not only to stay together and uniform on certain subjects, but that it's just flat out more professional. I think as the industry continues to mature and be taken taken more seriously by collision centers and insurance companies. I think it is on us to be practicing things that are more professional, things that
Oh,
are
absolutely.
more consistent, to be adding processes and procedures to the way that we do business so that we actually resemble the professionalism that we want other people to look at us with. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or look at us as. And I think by having processes and including things like this, process and procedures, I mean, I think it just makes us look more professional and more mature as an industry than a lot of people take us to be.
Yes.
Well, everybody is like, well, how do you argue with an adjuster? And it's like, well, when you do your processing and your documentation properly, there's no arguing. And that's what I've found as I've matured myself as a technician, and I matured my estimating process and documentation. I found that I had to quit arguing as much, and I never had to argue because I documented everything thoroughly.
Hmm.
And when you get in there, and that's why we're having this discussion about documenting these sizes. When we're into that oversize, there's no size documentation past a $50 coin.
Correct.
There is hen egg, which we already discussed, varies from 15 to 30 ounces. That's a huge variance. Okay, well, is that the hen egg whole or after I crack it and let it fall out on the panel?
Right.
Now, is that when I let it crack on a black panel on a hot summer day in Texas when it's 220 degrees and it cooks in only a 2-inch circle? Or when it spreads out across the whole panel because I'm in South Dakota? So,
oh, gosh.
By defining these sizes and making it consistent, and it doesn't matter if you're using a Paul Kordon price guide, a tactical dent guide, or one of the hundreds of others, or if you made your own, whether you're doing it in Mobile Tech or somebody else, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is you've done a process and you've defined that size outside of 1.205 has a dollar amount.
Absolutely.
And
So-
techs need to remember, we've trained as little boys and little girls when you went right before dinner and you'd want a cookie before dinner and you would ask your mom for the cookie, how many times would you ask? You would ask 5, 10, 20 times. You wouldn't stop asking
Until you got it.
Mom said, "Okay, here, have a cookie." That's how your attitude needs to be with adjusters. You
That's
gotta
a great
ask
point.
you gotta ask for the cookie.
Yeah, if you don't
You're not going to
ask-
get the cookie if you don't ask.
So I think that's a great wrapping up point. As we start to draw to a close, I want to let's reiterate really briefly in bullet points what needs to happen. I have an insurance. I am writing an estimate tomorrow, and I have extreme hail damage. Paul, what do I need to do? Bullet point summary.
You need to make sure that you have a price guide or the price dent feature on Mobile Tech RX. You need to mark the damage out, measure it, take pictures of it, write all that out on the panel, and then you need to make sure that goes into the estimate. And then when the re-inspector comes to look at the car, you're going to go over the process with them and why it is what it is, and you're going to ask for it. And then you're going to manage what you can when you get feedback on that. But I think when you give them that help of marking the damage, taking the photos, and showing them, documenting why it is what it is, you've essentially taken the argument out of the situation, just like John just said. You've done their work for them, and all they've got to do is snap some photos of it if they really need to, and attach it to the rest of it.
And we've already done their work for them by circling it. So
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, let them come back with some kind of argument. You've presented your case, you've rested that case. Let them try to beat you up afterwards.
Yeah.
And
I haven't had an argument in years with an adjuster.
Mhm.
now they're 5. That's because I never see them.
I've seen lots, and it's been 2012 was the last time I had an adjuster I couldn't get along with.
yeah, but Hudson, let me ask you: Do you ask for the cookie?
Yeah, I actually have 2 right now. I was supposed to start on a hail card today, and I told them, I said, paint it. And they were like, what? I go, paint it. It's like, well, no. I'm like, look, man, I gave you a lot of breaks on this one too. Like these should be all $50, and I'm writing them down as quarters just to help you out. Like paint it.
Are you comparing that to conventional?
No, I compare it to like, hey, this is what the job is cost.
Okay, let me ask
repaired.
you. Okay, what's your price compared to conventional? Is it over or under?
I don't know. Honestly, just for myself, I don't ever allow myself to look at that because I don't want to ever be tempted to put, I don't know. I just like to tempt myself.
Let me add something onto that discussion on that, and we'll close on this really fast. But, for a long time, the PDR industry, it was like, okay, it went off matrix. I want conventional cost. That's great, but you had no justification other than it went off matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And the process that we're discussing about, I stopped doing that because I started following these processes. And while my numbers were the same, I explained why my numbers are there. Mm-hmm. And I defined these extreme large dents. And because I defined all of that and I explained all of that, I no longer had to justify what I was charging. My justification was wrote in my repair plan. What they had to do was justify why not to pay me, and I zero pushback. All last summer, I hit these things like never before, following this set of rules. I built all the way up to that, and I had zero pushback.
That's awesome.
The thing you also have to remember is these guys, these adjusters, all covet cycle times. Cycle times are how fast is that car going to get back to the customer? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's more valuable to that adjuster because he gets paid bonuses off of that, keeping his cycle times. And you're the hero there. And so you're feeling guilty for asking for the cookie, but you shouldn't ask for the cookie, full cookie, not quarter cookie, the whole cookie.
So let me put that cycle time comment into perspective. I was just talking to a local adjuster, and he said that Erie Insurance made a statement that if every single customer that they had in a claim had a rental car coverage that went over by 1 day, that they are losing $5 million on that 1 day over the estimated target time for delivery. And we all know that many go more than 1 day.
Yeah.
And so it's to the tune of potentially tens of millions of dollars that these insurance companies are affected by when it comes to cycle time going longer than it was expected to. And there are some cars that go, I don't know about you, but I know shops that have cars for months.
Oh yeah.
At times.
Yeah. Because they can't get parts. Yeah.
It's just, so cycle time is huge. And that's where really you as a technician should have a good working knowledge of how the collision repair industry operates.
Absolutely.
And that will help you 1,000,000% in understanding where your value is in relation to what they do and what
that we should maybe have an adjuster on to break it down for us and tell us all the hidden secrets.
Hey, if you're an adjuster and you listen to this show, then please message any of us here.
And you're currently unemployed?
No. If you're an adjuster and you would love to come on the show and give us some feedback of what you're hearing right now, we would love to hear that. I personally know there's at least one adjuster that does listen to this show. I know that. He's also dabbles in PDR, so that's why he listens as well. But we would love your knowledge on this. And
can you mask his voice and give him anonymity?
Yeah, we'll block him out. Everything. Yeah.
yeah. This is, but well, awesome. Well, man, I'm excited about this. I love, not having to argue about things, and I love the fact that we could be more professional. Being professional, like I think Shane Jacks, Keith Cosentino, several years when they started PDR College, I think they started a wave of professionalism in our industry. And I've loved this, and I would love for us to continue carrying that torch further and further.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Always fun, Paul.
Let's close this out with because it is a tool show. Let's talk 2 minutes about tools. Paul, what are you using that you're loving right now?
Ooh, what am I using that I'm loving? You got me off guard. I wasn't thinking about it.
I know. Good.
I'm trying to think here.
We already know he loves hog glue, Daniel. Okay.
Yeah, I do like hog glue. I've actually been using that the whole time. One of the things I'm most excited about right now has got to be Kiko's dead center tabs.
Holy moly, yes.
I haven't had a chance
And
to
listen,
try.
I'm just being honest. Now, I haven't tried the hog tabs yet, but
What's
the
the dead-
Kiko dead center tabs,
What are the
are
dead center
ridiculous.
tabs?
Dude,
That's
I
their
would,
newest line.
they're the real deal. They're the real deal.
I don't know how to explain it, but I can tell you they sent a tab in the variety pack that I'm not kidding. The head of the tab is like 2
Smaller than a
millimeters.
pencil eraser.
It's
small-
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I haven't used it yet.
But it's
See if that one
got
works,
the
but
real
they're
thin
tiny.
post, right?
It's got a
got a
skinny
thick post.
shaft and it's
Yeah.
a smooth, like, I don't know if it's the ice material or if it's something
Yeah.
modified.
You would
but
be really comfortable with it, Daniel, with the whole skinny shaft.
No, I have the tab. I'm like, okay.
No, okay, Daniel.
Mine might not be working then.
Okay,
Mine-
okay. So Vince D'Alessandro gets really upset because I'm not the kind of person. I don't really like to use foul language flippantly. It's something that I'm going. So the other day he was like, Hudson, just say a cuss word for me, please. Just say a cuss word. I'm like Vince, I'm not your puppet. He's like, come on, just say a cuss word. I'm like, I don't. I gotta really mean it. And I sent. We all communicate on Voxer, and I sent a Voxer, and I go, guys, I got the dead center tabs, Kiko dead center, and holy and just for Vince, but no, I'm 100% with you there.
I'm looking forward to trying them. My last 2 hail jobs haven't required anything special,
Well,
but I'm
you've
getting
had
ready
these
to do
out for a
another.
while. Why?
I don't know, man. I finally decided to take the plunge on them because I was like, man, I love my smooth tabs from Gangrene and or from Keith, and I don't know, dude. I
Are you
ordered a
putting
couple of
lot
variety
glue
packs.
on it? What are you doing?
No, it's just. I mean, use it like a regular glue tab. You don't have to do anything special. They just.
Everybody's
really,
bragging
really
about them.
Oh,
Oh my
It's
gosh.
amazing.
okay.
And
Everybody's
as
bragging
soon
about
as I used them, I sent a message to Chris, the owner, and I said, dude, these things are awesome. I said, please tell me you're making a set of crease tabs out of this stuff. And he was like, already in the works. Mold's already done. So,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a Range Rover, all aluminum Range Rover that I had to work on. If I didn't have those dead center tabs, it would have been even more of a nightmare than it already was. Like
Yeah.
those things saved me.
right on.
My shout out's got to go to Woody Koss and his ballistic tips.
Oh, I don't have them yet. I need to try them.
Man, I just got the Pee Wee and fucking.
Oh, that's gonna get me.
I got beat me. Freaking A. Thing works so good. I can't say enough
Wait,
about
which
it.
one do you use?
Well, they've got 3 sizes, but the Pee Wee is.
Oh, you're very
I mean-
comfortable with that one too.
I like the Pee Wee.
I'm gonna have to. That's some other ones that I'm gonna have to get ordered. I didn't use anything new on my, other than my Dent Reapers, and I finally got to break out my the new VIP with that new broadhead on it, and I really like that. But
That thing works great on door edges.
Yeah, I got to tap like twice. That's it. My last 2 hail jobs have been, I'll be honest, they've been gravy.
Fantastic.
So I'm definitely not complaining, but it's definitely it's different because, as we were discussing this process, this was my last year. My last year of professional hail chasing was spent writing hail damage in Price of Dent using a price guide.
Yeah.
Because that's how extreme it was. So this year it's been kind of really nice that I've done 2 gravy jobs in a row and I've got a 3rd one waiting on me. So
Nice.
and I got to get some dead center tabs ordered because you guys have everybody's bragged about them so much.
They're the
Yeah.
real deal.
All right, guys. Well, I think that brings us to a close. Don't forget to level up your tools.
Don't do stupid stuff like 6 oversized dents.